everyone. Welcome to Online Card Classes Crafty Chat. Today we'll be chatting with Debby Hughes. Debby blogs at limedoodledesign.com, and her light and airy style inspired today's chat, where she is going to talk to you about putting your paper crafting projects in the perfect light with some simple photography tips. Welcome, Debby.
Hi.
Good to see you from such a long distance away.
Yeah, you'll love the accent. This is all the way from Scotland in the UK, which is why it's starting to get dark outside for me now.
Oh my
I think it's the middle of the day for you guys.
How many hours ahead are you, Debbie?
5 from the East Coast.
Oh, wow. So you're 7 from me.
Yikes.
It's like a completely different day there.
The kitchen's just off this room, so we're sort of doing tea time and the early evening, and kids are settling down with a bit of TV. So yes, it's totally a different time of day.
See, I like Debbie's voice so much that I think we should just sit here and let her talk the whole time.
I agree.
Absolutely.
She just calms me.
I know. It's so soothing.
It is.
Well, Debbie, tell us just a little bit about yourself, how you got started paper crafting, and then we'll talk a little bit about photography.
Okay. Well, I've got a science background, but I stopped all of that when I had children. And it was once I'd got my third child, I started helping out at a local arts and crafts with a friend. And from there, I thought I'd have a go at blogging, and I didn't even tell any family or friends. It was just something for me. And I was creating by this point, creating cards and enjoying a community of people that I could join in with, and that was separate to my family life. That it was a little bit of me time, and I could go and enjoy myself once the children were in bed, or if they were having a sleep or something like that, that I could go, and it was something home-based, and I was thoroughly enjoying it. So I think it was in, I think it was 2010 I started my blog, Line Doodle Design, and I just started entering a few challenges and just enjoying being part of the crafting community. And it just sort of spiraled from there, and before you know it, you're doing different things, you're contributing here or you're helping there, and well, we're now 5 years later. Still thoroughly enjoying it, but it's become much more a part of my life as time's gone on. My children are older, so I can dedicate more time to it as well. They're all in school now, crikey. Times have changed from a little bit of escape from 3 young ones running around the place to now all 3 of them are at school. So yeah, that's basically how I got into it. It was through a friend doing a little bit of arts and crafts volunteering at the local community centre.
I'm curious, Debbie. We just talked to Laura in another chat a while ago, and she talked about Stampin' Up! Was kind of her gateway drug. That's how she. Was there a company or a website or something that kind of drew you in, or you found community through? Is there a place that you kind of feel like you got your start visiting?
I wasn't so much. Oh, crikey! I wasn't so much in the Stampin' Up! Community, although at the time it was very difficult to get consistent supplies in the UK. And Stampin' Up! Eventually, when I first started out, Stampin' Up! Went in the UK, and it was just fabulous when all of a sudden there was a company that came in that you could purchase, cardstock in a rainbow of colours. Before that, you were often mixing things in a little bit with the children's crafts, and you weren't always getting quality products in the UK. And then Stampin' Up! Came across, and that was fabulous to get some good quality products that were available. Paper Tray Ink was a big one for me at one point, and I was very much part of Paper Tray Ink and Split Coast Stampers and the communities within those forums. And then, I don't know, it's just sort of spread from there, really. And now I suppose I spend more time with communities on Facebook and Instagram, and I think, sort of spread outwards a little bit into different social media, whereas before I think I was more forums and local groups.
I wrote about you on my blog the other day because I remember what's so cool about having this chat about photography with you is I remember when you told me you didn't think you could do a video. I think it was you were doing a tutorial for Split Coast or something. You're like, oh my goodness, I can't do a video. I've never done that before. And so, it gives people a lot of hope who maybe have never done a video before that it wasn't that long ago that you didn't think you could do those kind of things, and so
It's
you're
all Jennifer's fault. It's Jennifer's fault.
I think I saw your work and I nagged you into doing them, didn't I?
You did basically, yes. I think the first time you contacted me, I was on holiday and I was like, oh, there's no way I can get a video done. I'm actually out of the country, and you persuaded me to do a few cards, just with photographs. And then bit by bit, she gets you to do a little bit, oh, well, you could try a video. You really could try a video. And bit by bit, so I did, and I've loved doing them. I really do. I'm always a bit nervous, either talking on camera and things, but I love doing the videos and I love that feeling of sharing what you've learned along the way. It's what you've picked up over the years.
Yep.
I knew you would be good at them because whenever I talk to you, like an email, you're just so concise, and I knew you had a good accent, so that would sell people. And you always had, you're very professional. Like, I know that if we're working with you on something for a class, it's going to be on time, and it's going to be in this bundled little package and beautiful and heavenly. And so I knew that a video would turn out the same way with you. So I nagged you, sorry. I've done that to a few people. But I see this talent, and I knew as soon as I saw Debbie's cards, I knew that girl had, man, she's got talent. Wow. And I knew you could teach too. There's just something about the way you make cards that you could share with others. So.
And that's a great point, because technology should never get in your way of sharing,
Yes.
beautiful stuff that you do. And it doesn't have to.
The guys have been so great. I mean, my first videos, they started out, crikey, when I was, sort of learning how to set up the video camera and things, and I think I had it hanging from the window at one point, trying to get it above my desk, and they were so good. All my videos came back, and slowly but surely, hopefully, they've improved in professionalism and such like. But they've always been fabulous.
Well, what do you think you would tell people who are photographing their cards? They're just starting out, trying to get better at photography. I know that, I've kind of watched your photographs evolve too, and what's interesting about your photographs is they sort of mimic your style. They're kind of bright and light and clean, like your cards are. So what are just some basic tips if I've never blogged before, I just want my cards to look the best in an online gallery? What's the first thing I should do?
I think one of the first things is to think about what you do when you normally look at a card if you're holding it in your hand, and you've normally got it sort of quite in front of you. And I think if you're going to take a photograph of a card, you really want to get that same connection as if you're holding the card in front of you. So personally, I like to get down really low to a card and take a photograph as if you're looking straight on. So I know there's lots of different styles, and everybody has their own style. But for me, I like to feel that I'm connected to the person that you're giving the card to, and that by getting down low, and it would be as if it was in their hands. So that's sort of, it's the angle that you're taking the photograph at, so that it's not perhaps too overhead. And then I think the second thing is the best lighting you can get. I like natural light, and I've got this big window here, and this is where I take my card photography. I've got this big window here to the side of me, and if you can at all possibly do so, I would take photographs in natural light. You get some beautiful soft shadows, and it gives that lovely airy feel. You're not getting bright, harsh edges to things that you might get if you were trying to use a spotlight or something. And you're not also going to get that color cast that you can get off house lights.
So if you need to take a picture of a card and it's not good lighting outside, or it's nighttime, do you wait until there's better lighting, or do you ever have to make
hardly ever used any lights? I've tried, but I generally don't like the results. So for me, I will generally, if I possibly can, and I'll make a few cards, and then I'll set up some very simple backdrops, which we can perhaps talk about a bit later. And I'll set up, and I'll just take a few card photographs one morning, and that's what I would prefer to do. Now I know that's not always possible, especially if people are out at work, out of the house, and they can't get access to natural daylight all the time. But that's just the way I've found that I prefer to take them. Like I say, I've tried various things. You can get quite a lot of the daytime by using a tripod, or putting your camera onto a stable surface so that your camera's still and you can let in a little bit more light. So you can take photographs from quite early in the morning till quite late in the afternoon by using a stable surface so that your camera isn't shaking and letting a little bit more light. But I do tend to stick to daylight.
That's a good tip on that long exposure, though. I hadn't thought about that. I'm almost always holding my camera, and I think that's a better tip, to put it down and just let the exposure be what it is.
Yeah. I live in Scotland, and I live opposite some woods, and in the summer it's not too bad, but a lot of the winter I have to use quite long exposures to get a light photograph. So by having it on a stable surface, it allows that. It means that the camera, that the photograph is still going to be sharp, that you're going to be able to keep the camera still for long enough to be able to take a picture.
So
you don't have to have a tripod.
Do you use a tripod at all?
I do, but I mean, you don't have to. I've seen people just put books or acrylic blocks down and just create a stable surface. I do have a tripod, but that's because I love photography, and I've perhaps splurged on a few of the gadgets along the way. We all do that with ours.
The tripod that I used for videos was my husband's in high school. I think that's something that's important. I think what Debbie just said about putting your camera on books, I think I get intimidated thinking about trying to improve my photos of my cards, because I'm like, I got to go buy all this equipment. I really don't know what I'm doing.
Right.
I think that's a good tip of the books, is try to rig something up temporarily just to see if it works for you before you invest in anything.
Yeah. I mean, I quite often get asked about buying a new camera, and I would say it's getting a new camera, if you're good at using your old one, might help, but an awful lot of the time improving your photography, I think, comes from getting the manual out and learning how to use it better.
Yeah.
Reading instructions? What?
I know.
No.
And it's like card making. You need to practice a lot before you get it, and I think with photography you got to practice a lot.
I mean, before coming on here, I was looking back on some photographs, and I was looking back at some photographs by other bloggers as well, and it is very interesting. Somebody can go and get a fancy DSLR camera, and their photographs from a few years ago are probably, what they would class as not being great. And then slowly over the time, they've learned how to use their camera better, and their photography's improved, and their composition of their photographs, and all the other bits and pieces that you can include to try and make a picture which is appealing has improved over time. And it's like you say, it's just a case of a lot of practice. I mean, I love photography, so it's not something I've got a background in. It's just something that I've picked up as I've gone along because I love it.
And it has evolved. Some of the earliest photos from when I first started uploading to galleries were done on a flatbed scanner, and they look terrible. That's what everybody used to do, is scan their photographs, because just basic photographic equipment that we have now, just that would never have entered our world as crafters.
Yeah, well, I think I didn't buy a digital camera until my youngest was born, and the massive change over that period of time, and how many photographs I take now as a result of the changes in technology is huge. I mean, when we used to go on holiday, we'd have our family camera, and you would take your film and go and take your pictures. And nowadays, everybody takes their phone with them, and they don't even necessarily take a camera. So photography is that much more accessible, I think, to everybody, because you're not worrying about the cost of film or anything. You can snap as many digital photographs as you want, and most people now have a phone of some description that will take a very good photograph.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
a lot of people out there who photograph their cards and videos with iPhones.
Back in the day, I had this post on my blog, and I think what was it for? Something like people bought something and then they got a little secret post that showed how I photographed my cards. And when I created that post, I actually showed how you could create or how you could photograph your cards using your iPhone. And it was interesting because I took like the picture of the card with my nice DSLR camera, and then I took one with my iPhone. And this was, I think it was an iPhone 4. I mean, the camera was good, but it wasn't what they are now even. And I mean, I could see a little bit of a difference between the two, but I mean, unless I'm going to be printing out the photo, there's not a huge difference between, you know, what I was getting from both. Of course, I wasn't doing anything fancy. I wasn't adjusting anything on the camera. It was just kind of a straight point and shoot. But I think it really demonstrated that if you have just an iPhone or a Samsung Galaxy or just a really nice smartphone that has a good camera, you can totally get away with just using your phone to take pictures of your cards.
Natural light, that's pretty.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think good lighting is as important or more important. Now, I bought Christina Werner's old camera.
You did?
And I thought that would make me Christina Werner, but it did not. I just want to tell everybody, it did not.
That was like what, like 2008?
Yeah, that was forever ago.
Yeah. But, I mean, back in the day, like the way I've taken card photos for my blog has changed a little bit. For a huge block of time, even just until the beginning of 2015, I always used artificial light, these two lamps on my desk. They're the same lamps I use when I film my videos. And I just angled them just right and propped up some pattern paper behind them and stood up the card and then took a picture. And I mostly did that because like I was making cards really late at night. It was dark, there was no natural light, and I am the #1 best procrastinator. So I always did things at the last minute, and I had to have that photo taken. So it was sort of born out of necessity, my setup with that. But I guess it was the beginning of 2015. I decided to try taking some photos with the card laying down flat, and I just couldn't get good lighting with my lamps, and so I ended up using a window in my guest room out this hall and across the hall because it had pretty good light throughout the day, and I could actually, well, here's my setup. This is totally like DIY. So I've got my niece's pack and play set up and standing up, and then I've got this big wooden board going over the entire pack and play so that I can wheel it over right in front of the window because it's a guest room. There's like a bed right there. I don't have anything that's really right up next to the window. So I roll that board in on the pack and play, and then I lay out my stuff and take a photo.
Okay, you want to hear we could make fun of each other with our setup. So I have a 9-foot window in my craft room, and there's like a countertop right in front of it. I climb up on the countertop, and I stand on the countertop and shoot down when I'm laying.
You do not.
So sometimes I have to edit out my toes. Like I have to crop them out. Yeah.
That is great.
I am not Debbie. I would like to be Debbie for many reasons, but I'm not. And I have to ask my husband to set up the camera. If we go on vacation and he changes the settings and the lens, I have to call him at work and say, okay, how do I get it back to taking pictures of cards? 'Cause I don't know. So I like to do that. However, I'm like, well, I don't take pictures at night, but if the weather's not great, I just use the lights that are in my room and I go with it. And I can tell you, my pictures aren't nearly as good as everybody else's here. But I'm hoping that the people who read my blog are okay with that because they're really just looking at the card.
Mm-hmm.
Photograph has got to show the card, and it's got to be hopefully in crisp focus and be able to see the elements of it. And that's, I think sometimes it's a balance between getting a photograph that's actually got all the detail in it and one which might be more a Pinterest pinnable, really airy, light one, but maybe you lose a little bit of the detail. And it's a balance, I think, between getting a card that people can look at and say, yes, that's a stamp set or whatever, and one where things were a little bit blown out. And I think that's a balance that you have to achieve, that ultimately you want people to be able to see. They say see the card, that's what they've come to see. Yeah.
Well, I have a technical question for Debbie.
So
So when I create a card that has lots of white on it, it's kind of like white on white. I think I love that look. It's super classy. I sometimes have a hard time photographing it because you just can't see the detail of all the white and all the texture and things like that. But I know with your cards you do love a lot of white and you photograph it well. So I'm wondering if there's anything in particular that you do for cards that are really white heavy. If you angle it a little bit differently, try to get some shadow on it, or is there anything?
I do tend to angle the card to the light, and I often find that for difficult photographs, I often find that taking them in the morning or the late afternoon, where you've got lots of soft light, it seems to show up the details better than hard light in the middle of the day. And people think that the more light you have is better, but I tend to find that in the middle of the day, although you've got the opportunity to take a nice sharp picture, they often don't look as nice, I think, because sometimes it's a bit like that. They call it the golden hour, don't they? The photographers who actually have it as a business, and they go out in the first thing in the morning and last thing at night, and they get the lovely golden light. We don't want the colour change of a golden hour, but I think the softer light of a morning or afternoon will often pick up the details more. So that's when I tend to take my photographs, particularly if they're tricky ones. And I do take a lot of pictures. I will say that I'm self-taught, and I've managed to work out some things which I find to be useful and helpful, and I can sit there, and it doesn't take me as long to take pictures now as perhaps it did when I was first starting taking photographs. But ultimately it's trial and error. And I've got my little setup here, and I know that if I angle the card this way, or I take it in the morning light, that I'll get a better result. But it has just come from lots of trial and error, and taking a picture and thinking, yeah, that one's turned out okay, and that was first time, or maybe taking a few more until you find something that you're happy with. It depends on. I like photography, so I'm prepared to invest that time. I don't think you have to invest that time. It's just something that I enjoy.
So I'm making a mental note for myself, and I think this might be helpful if anyone's watching, that I need to sort of do an experiment on my own, like put a card out and maybe take 4 or 5 photos of it throughout the day just to see how the light changes throughout the day. And then I'll know later that, I've got this really white card. Maybe I should try taking it at 2 p.m. in the afternoon because the light's a little bit better.
Yeah. And change things like keeping the camera still so that you can let in the more light to get the lighter look. You can, if things have got a little bit blown out, you can adjust things in editing programs, but it's always nicer to try and get it right in camera. But there are editing programs there which can help afterwards to bring out some detail. But like I say, it's nice to feel that you've actually nailed it. We all use editing programs, I'm sure, just to crop the photographs so that you can crop out the mess from around and about, and things like that. So you want to make it look its best, but it is nice to feel that you've achieved a good photograph to start with.
So your advice would be spend more time on having a good condition for the photograph than you spend in Photoshop or PicMonkey or whatever your editing program is. Spend that time on the front end instead.
Yeah. I do edit my photographs, but generally it's like a straighten, because I can't do a straight line. A straighten and a crop into a square normally, and a little bit of boost of contrast and things like that. But I don't think I edit, in comparison to what you can do, and I know what you can do in Photoshop is absolutely huge. I just do a little bit of a, as if you're going out for the night, a little bit of a brush and a touch up, and then it's presentable for show. And we all do that, wouldn't we? If you're going out for the evening, you put your best best face on and everything. And I think that's something that photo editing allows you to do. But ultimately, having a nice picture in the first place is what I aim for.
And you don't need to have Photoshop for all that, too. You can use...
No.
Isn't PicMonkey free?
Yeah,
Yeah.
PicMonkey's great.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people who use that.
Or if you click it on your phone, you can just use a free app, or just spend a couple bucks and buy a good photo editing app.
Yeah. I have a great I'm one of the people that films with my iPhone, and there's a great app called iFocus, except focus is spelled with a PH, that actually you can do white balancing and manual white balancing and manual focus just in that app, and it's a fantastic tool.
Awesome.
So you take photos of your cards with your iPhone?
I don't. I use my DSLR for my cards, but I do my video with my iPhone, and I use that app to do my video because it does let me do manual white balancing and focus
Oh, that's cool.
instead of the native camera app.
So, Debbie, you actually have tutorials on your blog, right?
I've got a few. I get asked quite often about card photography, so I started a series called Limelight, just to play on the line doodle aspect of my blog name. And I just looked at a few things that can be helpful, which is angling the card towards light and the getting down low when you're taking your picture so that you feel connected to what you're trying to take a picture of. I think there was one looking at using a timer, and even if you're using, this comes down to me, for me, getting a sharp photograph is keeping the camera stable and using a timer. And you know, phones have timers. It just means I've got these big clumsy fingers, and when I press the button, you know, the whole thing shakes. So by putting it into onto a book or onto a tripod and then using the self timer means that you're giving the camera, whatever camera you've got, the best opportunity. And you know, DSLRs and point and shoot and phones, they all have a self timer, and that's a big help to me. I also looked at using a reflector. If you've got your nice big window and you've got your card set up, but perhaps you are getting some harsh shadows, if you put the window, then that will bounce a little bit of the light back into the shadows and soften things a little bit. So that was something I talked about on one post.
White cardstock for that? Do you have a bigger whiteboard?
No, I have got foam board, but it's the piece I'd normally use is an A4 type size, and I just stick it next to the card on the opposite of the window. So basically, you've got the window on one side, and if need be, a white piece of foam board, and the cards in between, and so you've got the light sort of coming in and then getting bounced back off the other side. That can just help to. It allows more light onto the project, and it can fill in those shadows a bit if they're a bit harsh.
It makes a big difference.
Yeah, that's a great tip.
The one thing I also noticed when you were talking about light bouncing off things, so remember my pack and play with the wooden board setup?
I love it.
I've got the wooden board, and like I extend my camera out in front of me, and I've got the screen flipped open, and I'm looking at it. I've noticed recently, and if you go look at my blog, you'll see this now that I'm going to mention it. The shadows at the very bottom of the photograph, you can see the color of my shirt reflected in the shadows.
I only heard about this the other day, and I've not even thought about it, that people said you should wear a neutral color when you're taking pictures.
I've heard that too. I ain't got no time to change.
I have like a black bathrobe, and I've started just like putting that on the bed in the guest room so that I can put that on to cover up what I'm wearing, so I'm not going to get any weirred colors.
I wear my colours most of the time anyway. I'm good. I'm wearing my blacks or my navies. I don't tend to do a lot of the bright colours.
I mean, yesterday I was taking a photo, and I was wearing this like bright pink like fuchsia shirt, and I take the photo, I come back to my computer and I look at it, and I'm like, it's pink. Like, that was a white card, and it's casting a pink shadow. Like, what is going on here? I was so confused, and so yeah, it took me a while to figure it out, but it's my shirt. It's reflecting the color. So put a piece of white cardstock in front of me.
Yeah.
Do you, Christina, do you use a tripod then? No?
I don't. But now that Debbie's mentioning it, I'm thinking maybe I'll try doing that because, to her point about, you know, you can take a photo a little bit later in the evening or very early in the morning if you adjust the settings on your camera to allow more light. So, and for those of you who are unfamiliar with manual settings on your camera, if you let in lots of light, your photo will be more blurry unless you have it on a tripod. So I think I might try that a little bit, see what happens.
The other thing about a tripod that I've found, and this is perhaps taking the photography that one step further for people that might be a little bit more interested, but say you've taken your picture and you sort of think, oh gosh, I wish I hadn't got that pencil in the way, or that the bow's not quite right. If the camera's on a tripod, then you can just adjust something or move something out of the way or angle it slightly differently and take the picture again, and you've not had to reset everything, and you know that you've roughly got it in the right angle. Now, like I say, it is getting that little bit more in depth, but if you are thinking about you know, oh, I tend to put some washi tapes or some vases in the background, just something simple that adds interest, but they can sometimes not look right, or they can be in the wrong place, or they're, you know, they're drawing the eye, and just by moving them around. So I can take one picture and think, oh, it looks like there's a, you know, there's a vase coming out of that character's head or something. It looks totally off, and you know, I can take the same picture again, but just move the vase over to the side without having to reset everything.
Isn't it funny how you can look at a photograph and see things that you didn't see with your eye when you were photographing them?
I mean, I think it does. It totally gives a different angle on things. I mean, for a start, I suppose even when I'm taking a picture, I'm often not always right down low myself. Like I say, the camera's on a tripod, and then you take a picture and think, oh, well, why didn't I see that? Yeah.
So basically, we need to get Jennifer a really tall tripod.
I don't use a tripod because I don't want a tripod sitting around.
Yeah.
Well, you do realize that they fold up, right?
But I mean, you gotta take this around.
This is how small mine is.
I know, but it would be really easy if you left it set up so you could just go and do it, right? I don't want another thing.
Yeah. So what you need is you need the Mission Impossible tripod that you push a button, it comes down out of your ceiling, photographs your car.
Inspector Gadget.
Yeah.
I want to say go Gadget.
In my dream house, I would have a spot in my house which was set up, and you just, you know, could put the card there, take a photograph, and walk away, and everything would be right just first time.
That's what I would want, because I'm always limited in time with the little ones. So, but I don't want to leave that sitting out. I like to have everything looking decent. So that's the only reason I've resisted it. And I don't know, my pictures are not the best at all, but they're working, so I'm just going to go with it. I know a lot of
people able to see the card. I mean, you know. And
they're not always in focus, and they're not always, and there's shadows, and I think people are okay with that sometimes. Have any of you used like the light box? I know that you can get inexpensive for like 30 or some bucks, like a light box, and it's just this pop-up thing, and you put 2 lights outside of it, and it makes this white. I know a lot of card makers use that, and I wondered if any of you had.
Mine turned into a cat tent.
Exactly. That's why we can't have nice things, Jennifer. We have cats.
Well, no, I got one of those, but it wasn't even for cards. It was to take photos of my manicures for my nail blog. dailysomething.com. Shameless plug. I don't post there a lot. Please don't go there. Anyway, so I got it for that, but then I realized that I just got better photos just in front of a window using my iPhone.
Oh, I was just going to say, I live in such a sunny place. I just walk outside. I mean, it's so much easier than setting something up and taking it down. And I have a very small studio, I mean, tiny, that I can't have a light tent sitting out. So I just go out and let God light up my photos.
That's a fabulous job of it. I tried it, and not being in a very bright and sunny place, I found that although you could get softer shadows, which I suppose is the whole idea of a light tent, but then when you haven't got much light, it's cutting out light in the first place. So I found that I was having more difficulty taking the photographs in the light tent just due to the lack of light. Even if you had those spotlight things on the side, I then found I got like I didn't buy an expensive setup, maybe that was the problem, but I found I was getting hot spots of light. Even, to try and put the lights next to the light tent, you weren't getting a very diffuse light. It was still giving bright points on the card. So it was either going to be too dark if I didn't use the lights, or I was getting these hot spots of light from the bulbs. So I gave up, and natural light in a window I found to be much, much nicer. And if I wanted it softer, I just took the photograph earlier in the day.
Yeah.
It seems like, from what, some people I've asked how they photograph their cards, it seems like the trick isn't the equipment you have as much as it is using natural light and a reflector and the angle.
Yeah.
Because you can take an picture of a card and it can be angled wrong and it looks wonky. It looks out of shape or whatever. So I think the angle and the natural light and even just a white cardboard reflector can do so much more for you than a really expensive camera.
When I started, I had a piece of my mind's eye 12 by 12 scrapbook paper that looked like whitewashed, slightly roughed up wood grain, and a cheese board.
A cheese board.
A cheese board. It was one of these natural wood type cheese boards that had a nice grain on it, and I used to and it was only about, I was just trying to think, my hands are in the camera, it was only about this big, and I used to put my card on the cheese board and have the wood grain pattern behind, and I did that for a very long time. And that was all I had to start with for a long time. I haven't really changed that much now. The only thing I found is that the cheese board was quite small, so if you're trying to include a few accessories, like if you like having things like vases or something in the background, it was difficult to photograph that, just because the item that everything was sat on wasn't very, very large. So I saw online a couple of other bloggers had gone and got some cheap wood from the DIY store and just made up a few planks together and whitewashed them. So I did that, and I created something which, instead of being 12 by 12, was, a couple of foot wide. And that just gave a little bit more flexibility when you were trying to take a picture. But
having that extra space is awesome.
Yeah.
I just, in the last couple months, I bought sheets of wrapping paper from Paper Source.
That paper is gorgeous.
It opens up so many other options, because when I was just using 12 by 12 paper as a backdrop, I couldn't angle the camera too much, because then you get the edge of the paper. If I was photographing multiple cards, I was really limited on how much I could show of that background. So just having that big, huge sheet of beautiful paper has completely opened up different, picture options for me. And I was just thinking as we were chatting, maybe with this blog post that goes up with this chat, I think I'm going to do this. I'm going to go grab some card images from our blogs from when we first started blogging.
Oh, no.
And then maybe a few years ago, and then current, so we can see the evolution of our.
Oh, I should try and dig out a really cracking rough one.
I'm going to go find the most ugly photo possible on all of our blogs.
That shouldn't be hard on mine.
That'll be the before, and then I'll find the most beautiful photo now, and that'll be the after.
Debbie, yours are, I'm glad you said that a couple minutes ago about including other things in the photo, because that's one of the things that's so inviting about your photographs is it looks like we're crafting with you, because you have a little roll of washi tape, or you'll have some sequins, and they're always color coordinated with your card, and it's sort of like a little vignette of Debbiness, and I love that.
I haven't got I've got quite a good washi collection. I haven't got a massive washi collection, but it is quite surprising. You can normally find something that tones with the colours that you're using. Maybe it's because I stick to colours that I like, so there's often some greens or some blues or some corals and things like that. So I naturally gravitate to those in washi tapes as well, and twine. I just think it pulls out the colour from the card and supports that colour, and I don't know, it creates a little story, like you say, I suppose. I mean, if you put a roll of twine and a pair of scissors down, then people just automatically start to sort of think about the process that you did to create the card, or that you, like you say, that you're there actually crafting with somebody. I don't know. I know some people don't like staged photographs, but for me, I feel it gives a feeling to the photograph more so than just being the card on its own.
Well, I think what yours is inviting. There are often times when people try to use props or whatever that are distracting. And it is really easy to cross over to distracting, and you never do with yours. That's why I don't use any props, because I'm always afraid of distracting from it. But you nail it every time. But sometimes you'll see a picture of a card, and everything around it is too distracting that you get lost. So I think if you make sure that what you have there is soft and subtle, and your eye still always goes, no matter what, always goes to the card.
Well, the things I tend to use in the background are glass, and I've got a white vase and a little white wooden birdhouse, things like that that are naturally toned, quite light, and go with the background anyway. And then to think about taking the photograph-wise, there's a little bit of technicality in the trying to create depth of field, and if you have a camera that can do that, then by having a shallow depth of field, those things blur out, and they just become sort of a vague ghost of things in the background, which is nice. And there's something there, and the photograph doesn't look too plain.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they're not in focus.
I think you really have to have an understanding of photography to really get it, and I think that's why yours works so amazingly, because you really understand the depth of field, keeping things in focus and stuff, and I think that's why it works so beautifully for you.
About including like scissors or some twine, or how that sort of hints at the actual process that you went through to create the card. It makes me think of, I follow a lot of calligraphers or brush lettering artists on Instagram, and I've noticed the images that I love the most are the ones where it shows the brush that they use, or it shows their watercolor palette. So I've tried to take some photos like that with my lettering, and I love those photos so much more because it reminds me what I was using, and it invites the viewer in, as like you said, as if they were there and they saw the process, they saw how it was created. I think it tells a story, and that's really important. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, I think another thing that's really nice is if you take a photograph really getting in close and personal. So if you've got something of a detail shot, and like you're saying, you've looked at other bloggers from different genres. I mean, food blogging is huge, and they take the most gorgeous, mouth-watering pictures. And I think there's so much to learn by looking at calligraphy or food bloggers or fashion bloggers and seeing what type of photographs they produce and how appealing they are. I mean, it doesn't really matter what the focus of the photograph is, but you can use the same techniques whether you replace a lipstick with a card, or mouth-watering freshly baked roll or something. We're all creating this feeling of what went into making the product.
I think that's one of the things everybody loves about Instagram, actually, is that we're all mixed together in there. Jennifer had made this comment earlier about, one post might be a food shot, then another one is somebody who's a gardener, and then there's brush lettering. There are all these fun things that feed your inspiration for that. And I hadn't thought about it feeding your photography inspiration, but that makes sense.
I love Pinterest, and I do. I just scroll through, and they on Pinterest they'll give you suggestions of things that maybe you might like, and you find the photographs that are appealing to you, and then try and recreate that in your own way with your own projects.
Christina, so you don't use props in your cards? Is that just because? I mean, I don't use them because I know I just can't. I know it won't work for me. It's like no line watercoloring. I'm not gonna try it.
You are. I'm gonna make you try it.
If you want to no line watercoloring, you go look at Christina's blog. So what do you just like the simple look, Christina, or is it because you like shooting it flat? I'm just curious as to your mindset.
I think I'm with you. I don't think that's my strong point. I don't know that I do that well, staging it with other items. I don't know that I've ever really tried it either. I don't know. I think it goes back to when I first started, that I was just like, I just want a really simple photo, get it done, get it up there, share it, and
Yeah.
move on to the next exciting project. I like taking photos, and I like actual editing of the photos. I think more than props, I really like to catch the dimension on the card. So I like to, back in the day I would angle the card so you could see a little bit of dimension, or now when I take my photos with the cards laying down flat, I like to, get down at a different angle so you can see the different layers of the card. So I focus on that more than...
You get lots of lovely rich deep colours in your photographs, and I think the darker backdrops can really help so that things aren't washed out. I think the papers that you bought were beautiful. I went straight off online when I saw those gorgeous papers. I was like, why can't we get paper source in the UK?
You know what? I love all those papers. I think I got about 20 of them, but I'm gravitating to about the same 2 or 3 because they're the ones that are neutral in the background, or ones that I'm having a love affair with this coral color right now. And that coral ombre from coral to white paper that I got, I'm using that everywhere because it speaks to me. And it doesn't hurt that when I redesigned my blog that was the color that I used. So it sort of fits.
But you're wearing it.
I have. Got some little coral bits. Yeah.
Well, should we talk about the elephant in the photography room, which is glitter, photographing shiny things?
Or foil. Oh.
Yeah. So hard.
I know magazines are starting to say avoid the foil just because it's such a challenge, especially because a lot of times the magazines or books or whatever have to shoot multiple cards at once, and if one is foil, I don't know.
The only way I've got it is to angle the card to the light, and you get that shine off it. Because I think sometimes if you can photograph a silver embossing or something like that, it just looks great.
Yes.
And then you can get the light catching it, and it looks so beautiful. And it's just angling everything. I think it's the only way to go. But crikey, if we were trying to angle lots of different cards, if you had a whole group of them, it would get very tricky. But that's what I've found to be helpful, is just to angle it to the lights until you get that catch, and then make sure that it's actually still doing that in the camera, where your camera angle is, that you're still getting that catch of light. Difficult. It is difficult.
I started including multiple photographs of the same card. I didn't do that before. I only would just have the one photo, and I started doing that because, to your point, with foils or anything metallic or glittery, the best photo to show the composition of the card didn't capture that brightness, the lightness, the glitter, so I would have to angle it a different way in order to get that. So I started sharing multiple viewpoints on the same card, and now I feel better about that. I feel bad that the first photo they're seeing doesn't show all the specialness involved. They have to scroll down and see the specialness, but I think that's probably for me the best way to do it.
My favorite photos are those angled close-up. That's what I enjoy.
Great. Like your Crazy Birds card, Christina. That was a great angle, I thought. But it's weird because Wink of Stella shows up so beautifully on video, and it's so much harder with a still photograph to get that. You get it, Jennifer. You can see your sparkly card.
I find Wink of Stella really difficult because it looks so nice in your hand, and yet it's so subtle that it is, for me, I find it a very difficult one to capture.
You know what? This reminded me of something. I was watching this video last night from a calligrapher, and she was talking about gold ink and how she likes to use it on place cards or things that are going to be shown in low lighting, like candlelight, so a wedding reception or a fancy dinner, for the place card. She likes to use it because the candlelight and the flickering light just makes that gold ink just breathe new life to it, because it makes it look really, really pretty. So I'm wondering if maybe why the Wink of Stella is not showing up is maybe the light is too harsh, maybe, or maybe we just need to get something that has a little more variation in the light. I wonder if the shimmer would show up more with that.
So maybe we need a stamp to put on our envelope that says, "Open this card under candlelight."
I love it.
I'm going to film my next video by candlelight.
I just think
You okay, Lydia? Did you pay your light bill? Are you okay?
Exactly. Got cut off.
I'm pretty sure everyone looks more flattering.
Oh, yeah, we should have had candlelight today. Think how beautiful we would all
I've
look.
got my lovely overhead lights here shining down on me. Yeah, it looks lovely.
Cool.
So, any other tips for us, Debbie? Any other magic to share?
I did write a few things down when I was trying to think. That was one thing I was thinking of. When you're making a card, the same rules that apply to design, and it shouldn't be me that's talking about this, it should be totally Christina, because all the graphic design stuff and things, but when you're thinking about designing a card and you're thinking about your rule of thirds and putting things in triangles, I think that so works well with photographs as well, that if you offset something so the card's off to one side slightly in your photograph, that's more appealing than perhaps it being very front and center. And just all those general things that you hear all the time about leading lines and things like that. So maybe that pair of scissors in the front there might be leading the eye into the card. So all those design principles that you can look up that will be relevant for making the card and making an appealing card are also so true for the photograph.
Oh, now I want to go examine all of your photographs. That's so cool. Never would have thought of that.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Maybe that's the secret sauce in your composition not being distracting.
Well, yeah, I think having the card as the main focal points, that's the most important thing, though, isn't it? That's what we've all come to see, is to see somebody's beautiful colouring of the latest stamp set, or how they've managed to do a no-line colouring, which I've never attempted.
I'm with you, girl.
Well, actually, that's a lie. I did attempt it once, and it never made it to the light of day.
Well, thank you so much. This has been amazing, illuminating, as you always are.
And where can we find you, Debbie?
Well, maybe I'm blogging over at Lime Doodle Design, and I've got the full quota of social media. I do like Instagram. I love pictures, so Instagram's a very friendly and beautiful place to be. And I'm on Facebook, and all the usual places. And I like to call in and just see what everybody else is up to.
Occasionally we drag you over to the U.S. to hang out with us.
Oh, please.
We love seeing you.
Yeah, we need a transporter for you, Debbie.
I know. But then again, the thought of, it's actually when I have come across to the States on my own, it's not that the long flight is quite appealing, because I have several hours on my own with a book and no children asking, Mum, can I have a snack? Mum, can I have a drink? Mum, I need to go to the toilet. And, I love it as much as I do. Actually, several hours on a plane with a good book on your own is actually one of the best feelings.
When I was a kid, I never understood, because my mom would eat the airplane food. Remember when they used to serve, meals? And she would talk about how good it was. And I'm like, this isn't good. Then she finally said, I didn't have to cook. I didn't have to clean. I didn't have to help you. This is the best meal I've ever had.
Exactly. I read a great article on that once. It was called The Peace at 40,000 Feet. This was before planes had Wi-Fi, and now we all feel the need to be on that. But there is something very peaceful about being up in the clouds by yourself.
Mm-hmm. No distractions, apart from the movies.
And we will be sure to give links to the photo tips, the Limelight series that you have on your website, because you're very good and clear at explaining things. So I think people will really find that helpful.
I should pick that up again and do a few more of those.
Well, I know they take a lot of time, so we really appreciate that you have what you've got on there. I think they're very helpful.
Well, thank you so much, Debbie. We really appreciate it. Well,
thanks for having me over today. It's been lovely seeing all your beautiful faces. Doing one of these Google Hangouts.
Yeah. Awesome. Or, as I call them, giggle hangouts.
Perfect.
Thank you all so much for joining us for today's Crafty Chat. You can find Debbie at limedoodledesign.com. And please see our blog post today for links to all of the resources that Debbie talked about, and we will see you soon.